Might just get your reaction first to James McClean's announcement today that he's going to retire, and was there any kind of consideration given to him playing these games this month?
Yeah, James was obviously named in the provisional squad, and regular contact with James. I think just obviously Liam Scales is actually in very good form at Celtic, playing in the Champions League, and he's played a lot on the left side as well. And also Ryan Manning has had some good form for Southampton recently. So James had a great career. He's had a terrific career, and he's still, it's not beyond the possibility of being called him the weekend after his injury and ask him to come back in and play. And that is the reality sometimes when you name squads. And so he's had a terrific career, James. I think young Irish players can learn a lot from how he approached his career. Ireland was always at the forefront of his thoughts. It was always the pinnacle for him, and it was always the most important thing to play for his country. And you have to respect that. I think, from my point of view, as a manager, obviously I managed him as a teenager, gave him his debut, and then sold him to Sunderland. But people change in that period, and obviously he's a different personality than when I managed the Irish team, because that's he's in his 30s by the time I take over the Ireland team. So he's a different personality, and what he brings there is that if there's any grey areas about who might play in the team sometimes, and decisions are not made, and depending on who's available, and he's so forceful in his training performances. Sometimes he gets himself in the team by just his sheer intensity in his training, in the sessions, and it's hard to ignore him then. When someone trains like that in the games, he puts it to the forefront of his mind, and that's what he's done.
Just on Liam Scales, who you went to see last night in Glasgow in the Champions League, he obviously finished at Shamrock Rovers playing mainly as a left wing back. He played a bit there when he went to Scotland initially. He seems to have rediscovered his form playing as a centre half. I think you played him once as a left back with the under-21s. It was mainly as a centre half, which is his preferred position. So do you see him playing as a left of the back three in your current formation with the senior team, or as a left wing back?
I think he can do both. I think he can do both, and I see like Liam, when Liam was at UCD, we capped him with the under-21 international team ahead of players who were playing with Premier League clubs at that time, and we brought him to the Toulon tournament at that time, and he had a good tournament, and played in some important wins. He's been in the squad a few times, and not made his debut yet, so he's been a bit unfortunate. He had a very good season. Obviously, did terrific with Shamrock Rovers, and had a very good season with Aberdeen. Initially, under Ange Postecoglou, we played actually 2 games in Europe at left back. That we rewatched recently, and he could certainly do that, no problem. He had a very good season with Aberdeen last year, mainly playing as left of the back three, and now he's playing as a centre half in a back two for Celtic, and playing very well. So it's a credit to him.
And just a quick one on Josh Cullen. I've watched a couple of his games recently for Burnley. The contrast between his international performances and Burnley are incredibly. It's a massive difference, because he seems to be playing with great confidence with Burnley. He's able to pass the ball. He's confident getting on the ball in the middle of the park, where he seems to have lost that a bit in an Irish jersey. Is there any way you can explain that?
I think that's your opinion. I wouldn't agree with that at all. I completely think you're wrong there. And I would certainly not agree with that at all. I think he's, all his performances, everyone has variations in their performance at some stage. And, I think Josh has been very consistent for Ireland, and, overall. And he had a good window in the last window. I felt his performances were good against, obviously, 2 of the top teams in the world, in France and Holland. And you know, even though Holland are as good as they are, and it was a tight game, we came out the wrong side of it. We lost 2-1. You know, we wouldn't be able to. 52% possession in that game, and you know, you don't do that unless the fulcrum, your midfield is on the ball consistently and on that. So Josh has been an excellent player for Ireland, and I don't concur with that.
Matt Dodd?
Stephen, just on the goalkeeping situation, Keegan Keller is available. Cameron Zinu maybe has had a difficult start to the season at Southampton. The last couple of games has been excellent. The win over Leeds, clean sheet over Stoke, Mark Travis's team as well. Can you maybe talk a little bit about Gavin?
Yeah, Queeveen, obviously we got the call. He got 12 stitches in his in a joint, in a leg joint, in a knee joint. So sometimes with stitches, if it's a calf or a toe or a facial injury, you know, you can get on with it, but you can't if it's on the joint. It just reopens all the time, and it's just unfortunate for Queeveen really, because he's played, like, obviously in the Europa League, and then he was going to play 3 weeks in a row, going to play tonight, and it's just unfortunate for him. With Gavin, obviously I've been at a few Southampton games, and they conceded some goals. Like, even though they were conceding a high number of goals early on, you'd be struggling to look at goal and say that goal was his fault. You know, sometimes that it can happen, and you know, you don't want it to happen. Yeah, you don't want your goalkeeper conceding a high number of goals, certainly. But I'm sure they've had 2 good wins, Southampton, and conceded 1 last week and a clean sheet the other night, so they'll take confidence from that.
Just looking ahead to the game, you probably can't read too much into Greece's results against Gibraltar, but are there some things that you might look at the Netherlands 3 Greece game that you can maybe use for this upcoming game?
Yeah, no, listen, Greece are a fine team. All the games have been, obviously, the Holland-Greece game was probably an anomaly because Holland found themselves up 3-0 at half time, but it wasn't a 3-0 game. It just importance of sort of set pieces, and Holland scored from a set play, and then they played very well in Amsterdam. Holland did that night all right, but that was obviously Greece have had a good game with France and had a convincing win against Gibraltar. So they're a good team, and one that we might have to make sure we're ready for. It's an important game for us, and you know, so we want to make sure we're ready for that.
Dan, can you please?
Hi Stephen. Are there any players in the squad who have injuries you're worried about? I know Dara Shane, Alan Brown weren't involved for their respective clubs.
No, I think Alan Brown, I believe, was an illness, and that's why he missed the game. So no one else that springs to mind that's carrying an injury coming in.
Good. Were you surprised that James decided to retire?
Not really. I think it's you know, he still has the opportunity of being involved in the squad at any time, and even though he might retire, if the possibility exists and we get a playoff in March, you still couldn't rule him out. But he has made a decision to retire, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and just lastly for me, and this is another topic, but the Aston Villa players have complained about their Castor jerseys, that they're collecting too much sweat and inhibiting performance. Obviously, your jerseys are made by Castor as well. Have your players had any of those issues or any complaints here or not?
No, I've not had any feedback in regard to that, and there hasn't really been a discussion at all. No, we've had no issues, to be honest.
And finally from Nancy.
Steve, sorry, just on Queen's, the 12 stitches, how did that was a collision, a training ground collision, or?
Yeah, I believe so.
You didn't get more details than that?
No, it was in training. Yeah, it was in training.
Okay, and on James, is there a chance James could actually join the camp at some stage next week? Is that invitation open to him?
No, not an invitation. It's not an invitation. Like, obviously, he's playing league games, and in the league that he's in, they don't break for the international window. playing league games. But if we get an injury in that position, he's next man in. You know, at that, you know, I think the left back, that left-sided players that we've had in Callum O'Dowd has been obviously out. He's having a groin operation. He's been unfortunate. Enda Stevens is injured, and Robbie Brady just come on back now and played last night, which is great. But he's obviously been out for a while and played last weekend. So it's played a half last weekend, which I was at, and so James is next one in. You know, so if there was an injury at the weekend in any of the games, you know, we'd look to bring James back in.